Welcome to the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast.
Well, then Perez has got the better of it, and he looks to get the better of Michael, and he's done it. Wilson's going to fall here for Alexis Sanchez. Henry, chance, goal!
This is me, Lean, from arsenalvision.co.uk.
Hello. Apologies for any funky sounds you can hear in this part of the recording. Currently recording this in Asda car park. Just been to visit the in-laws in Aylesbury, and the missus and the kids have gone into Asda to buy some important ingredients like cereal and stuff like that. I'm going to record this part now because I won't be able to do so later on. So any car sounds or children screaming and stuff, then I apologise in advance. Premier League football is back after the international break. Arsenal just smacked Liverpool 4-1 at the Emirates. Wonderful game. As I mentioned on the blog, it was my most enjoyable game of the season so far. I worried about the game before it started, and it was for no reason really, because we were fantastic. I was a bit concerned, international break and stuff, and we were playing Liverpool, who needed to win the game to stay in the Champions League race, and they'd be hungry and all that sort of jazz. But we flew up the traps, and we were the team who looked hungry and played wonderfully well. The way that we approached the game is exactly how I enjoy us playing. When we're pressing from the front, not allowing teams to settle, and then we're pinching the ball, and then we're playing the ball really quick. Our little interchanges between Santi and Ramsey and Ozil and Alexis, majestic, just majestic. And we should have scored early on. I'm sure many people worried like myself that when we didn't score the early goal, that the game might swing the other way. And I did have a good chance as well with Sterling and Markovic, yeah, something like that. And his pass was a bit rubbish, wasn't it, really? And Sterling couldn't slide it into an open goal. But these things happen in these big games, It wasn't the best marking. I think both Mertesacker and Koscielny were marking one player, and they allowed that guy, I think it's Markovic, free on the right hand side of the box. But, as I said, in big games, big teams with good players are going to create chances. It was a good pass to put him through, and he should have done better, but you got to take your chances. Ramsey had a great chance early on as well to score when he was clean through. His left foot shot wasn't really powerful enough to beat Mignolet in goal. But, we did get the first goal. We deserved it, and a great goal by Bellerin as well, cutting inside and left foot curling it. I can't see Bakary Sagna doing that. That's the bonus of having an attacking player at right back. And he cut inside and he goaled it brilliantly. And after that point, we scored our 3 goals in quick succession, really. Ozil's free kick was quality. Apparently he was practicing it in the warm-up. And Alexis' goal was just wonderful. The whole move was amazing. It's at such speed as well. He just smashed it above the keeper into the roof of the net. Glorious. And Giroud, as always, finding a way to get his goal at the end. Bits and pieces happening in between that. I'm going to go and hand you over to the guys. Enjoy the podcast, and we'll be back for Burnley. Take it easy.
Arsenal play well in victory in important football game. Funny opening takes holiday weekend break. My name is Elliot Smith, and you're listening to the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast, coming to you almost directly after, as far as you know, the glorious 4-1 triumph at home over Liverpool in nearly a reversal of the humiliation we suffered last season. But why bring that up? You know what? Pretend I didn't. We are going to break down every aspect of what was an excellent victory for Arsenal and continues a phenomenal winning run on the way to a domestic double. I am joined, as ever, by 2 more eloquent, erudite, and sophisticated individuals than myself, if that is even possible, and I will introduce them now, because that is the job of the host. The first is James. You can follow him at GoonerFanatic49 on Twitter. James, happy holiday to you.
Happy Easter Monday to you, Elliot.
Thank you very much. There's really no such thing as Easter Monday in the United States of America, because in a truly capitalist society, one must work all the time and take no holidays. But that's a topic for a totally different podcast. I'm also joined by a man who does many things in his pants. One of them is Poznaning. You can follow him there, Poznan in my pants on Twitter. His name is Paul. Paul, good Monday to you, my friend.
Woohoo! And happy Easter Monday to you. And Easter Monday is the anniversary of the Irish uprising, removing the British from our country or starting the process thereof. So there is an Easter Monday where people who know their history exist.
Exceptionally alienating introduction to this podcast. We'll just call it Monday. How about that? You got all kinds of weird holidays like Boxing Day and Easter Monday and things that people get to celebrate. But here we just have to work for a living, which is why at 10:12 a.m. Eastern Time on a Monday, Paul and myself, who live in the United States of America, are recording a podcast and not working. So I'll just shut up and continue with the podcast. If you missed it, you should go back and listen to our season review podcast that we posted during the interlull. It was exceptional. I'm not saying that. The New York Times reviewed it as such, so I'm just quoting them. But we did develop sort of a new technique of scoring the argument. We scored the debate. It was a little rough around the edges. James and Paul did tie at the end of the podcast. I swooped in with a late victory. We will attempt to do the same. The rules are very simple. If you're familiar with the game of football, you will know that 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, no points for a loss. We'll follow that same tradition today, and we will start with the lineup and formation. Going into the game, there was doubt over Danny Welbeck. And so then there's always the question of whether we should play a natural winger like a Theo Walcott or pack the middle of the park with all of our tricksy technical midfielders, move Ozil out wide, at least nominally. That's never been my preference because I don't think it's worked this season, but that's what the manager went for. James, what did you think when you saw the lineup, in particular Ozil, at least appearing to be played out wide?
Well, it was Ramsey really that appeared to play out wide, but
sorry, let me rephrase. I meant when you saw the lineup, my perception, sure. Because we played that 4-1-4-1 formation in the past, and Ozil would have been the wide player.
Well, I mean, I've talked about this in previous pods, and it's actually a lineup that I've been anticipating seeing, and one that I've been excited to see, purely because I think it incorporates the best attacking players we have all on the pitch at the same time. When I did see the lineup, I agree. I did think it was Cazorla probably playing in the 10 and Ozil out wide. But as ever, if you look at an Ozil heat map, it's pretty difficult to tell what position he's truly playing, since he's often coming out to the left and he's coming out to the right, and he'll pick up the ball deep sometimes, and obviously occupy spaces centrally outside the box too. But from a lineup point of view, I think, I'll be honest, I had expected Welbeck to start purely because the last time I predicted this lineup, Wenger went with Danny, but that might have partly been due to the fact that Danny was coming back from this sort of slight groin injury. But that being said, I do think this is the lineup that Wenger has been probably thinking about using for a little while and hasn't really had the opportunity to do so given injuries and the like. I think it worked out extremely well. As is clear, I was particularly content with it, and you could see from the off the way in which we were able to press with Ramsey out on right, which I'm sure Danny would have been able to provide too, but also, of course, his efficiency and his distribution and his ability to retain possession against a side such as Liverpool, who I think we probably would have expected to press us a little bit better than they did. But to also a team that are quite technical, that pack their midfield and have three centre-backs and the two wing-backs, I think it was important for us to be able to hold and retain the ball, especially in their half of the field. And that worked extremely well right from the off, especially in that first 10-15 minute period where we had a couple of chances, the Ramsey one in particular. Outside of the attacking 5 or 6, I was a little surprised to maybe see Mertesacker at the back, just because of the pace that the likes of Sterling have, and when Sturridge came on, you could see throughout the game that Sterling looked to really sort of tie into Mertesacker's side of the two players, which meant that Koscielny was sometimes dragged over to Mertesacker's side of the field in order to recover for him on one or two occasions, which was partly what led to Markovic having so much space for that opening chance for Liverpool. But that being said, Mertesacker did have a good game, and obviously we now find ourselves in a position where we can almost complain about the Motor-Shelny axis, which has proved to be so important for us over the last couple of seasons. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, it wasn't that much of a surprise. I think maybe a lot of people going in, like myself, may have expected Ramsey to have not started with Welbeck outright.
Yeah, I think the thing with Mertesacker that's so difficult is, of our three center backs, he is the best tackler on his feet, and I think he is the hardest to dribble past. And so you worry about him getting beat for pace, but when we're defending a little deeper, which we've done at times this season as well, and you think about a Sterling dribbling at any of our three center back possibilities, Koscielny, Gabriel, and Mertesacker, I think Mertesacker is the most difficult to dribble past, the one who would be most effective handling players like a Sterling or a Coutinho who can sort of trick their way past a center back. And I thought Per did pretty well not getting beat that way through most of the match. What about you, Paul? When you saw the lineup, did you have concerns about the formation, about the fact that really we didn't have a true wide player? I mean, Alexis also tends to drift inside. Or were you happy to see sort of what you might say is just our best talent on the pitch, the best 11 we can put out there?
Well, certainly I fell for this is going to be Ozil on the left trick.
Yeah, I did too.
And I do think there's a big difference between Ozil on the left and in the centre. I know he drifts out to the left, but I don't think that's the same as starting at the left or even rotating with Cazorla. So I did think it was going to be a big factor. Turned out he was playing at the number 10 spot, and he played really, really well. So it's certainly an issue. I wasn't surprised. I was maybe surprised that today was the day, but I wasn't surprised Wenger looked like he was going back to a 4-1-4-1, although that wasn't quite what happened. I thought it was really interesting. I mean, think of all of the debate and abuse or just discontent at seeing Ramsey playing on the wing historically, a year and a half or 2 years ago, whenever that was, when he was trying to play himself back into form. And here he was out on the wing. We played well. He played well. I mean, it was kind of radical and made for a fascinating tactical encounter. I thought it was really interesting seeing the two managers and quite a number of the players both talking about how important it was for Liverpool to get a fast start, or rather for us to stop them getting a fast start and doing to us what we actually ended up doing to them. So it was kind of a blistering first 10 or 15 minutes, but I think we ran out of puff at some point and we got into a lot of trouble when we didn't transition back to being tighter in defending ourselves, and there was quite an interesting ebb and flow of the game from that standpoint.
Yeah, I go ahead.
The other tactical decision, though I wasn't surprised by it, was the Mertesacker one. I mean, to me, it had to be Mertesacker at this point, just in terms of personnel, and they're standing in the packing order. But where I've been pretty critical of Per in the past, obviously he did really well in this game. If we look at that, I think it was the Monaco game at home, where we played a high line. He went way up the field chasing the striker who dropped deep and got nowhere near him, got beat, and they scored that goal. I think we talked about that one at length at one point. Mm-hmm. He did that numerous times with Sterling this time, but was right on him, was probably the best guy to be on him because his stand-up, his pressurizing, is right with Sterling when Sterling dropped deep. Koscielny covered Sterling getting past him and running around, which actually never happened. And in the first half, it was really Mertesacker versus Sterling. In the second half, it was really because Sturridge had come on, Sterling pushed a little wider. Then it was Sterling against Bellerin. But in that first half, I thought Per did excellently, even though he was, if you like, very exposed and high up the field, managed it really well. Apart from that one time, Koscielny got pulled over and Markovic went running through the middle because nobody in midfield covered him. Koscielny dropped off to double team Sterling, and that was one of those times where we didn't have our cover got blown, I think, very, very badly.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that when we saw the lineup, we would have assumed that it was a 4-1-4-1 because we've seen that tried this season, especially with that personnel. And if you look at sort of the heat maps and just the eye test, the way the game played out, it was almost more like a 4-2-3-1. Cazorla's heat map was deeper, more around the midfield stripe, Coughlin obviously as well. But Ramsey, Ozil, and Alexis, interestingly, they show up all over the pitch just at about 20 yards out. And I think Ozil's position could best be described as go wherever you think there's effective space, Mesut, because he showed up everywhere, on the right, on the left, in the center. He dropped deep at times to receive the ball from Cazorla and Coughlin. He was running down the flanks at other times. Same with Ramsey, same with Alexis. All while with Giroud kind of standing right at the center of the 18-yard box with everything pivoting around him. And it was really, really effective. We didn't really have width per se. Obviously, the fullbacks could provide that, and we saw that with Bellerin for the first goal. But Liverpool really struggled to track that free three behind Giroud. I think the opening points are going to go to Paul there. Comprehensively answered the question, and I think just really the spirit of what I was looking for with his answer.
Yes.
So we're going to give those to Paul.
Oh,
yeah. It's an early disappointment for James. It's 3-0. We'll see what happens from here on.
Like Arsenal, I had a very strong first 10 minutes, which really. It's hard to lose it once you go one up. You got
out of the blocks early,
Did,
and you do have home pitch advantage. So
yes,
now you can sit deep and defend your lead. So early pressure, Ramsey chance, Cazorla chance. James, we came out of the blocks flying. Let me ask you this: what do you think was the reason for our fast start, and were you concerned that at about the 15-minute mark, we hadn't gotten the goal that our dominance probably deserved and warranted?
I mean, the reason for the fast start was, first of all, we were clearly well up for this game. We're a team that's brimming with confidence at the moment, which is exemplified by the consecutive wins we've now had at the Emirates and our current run of form outside of the Monaco and then I suppose the Spurs game about a month or so back. But also the way in which we shaped up. We've been a team that is, even away from home at the beginning of games, has looked to press high up the field. It's a big reason why a player like Danny has been integral to the squad. The energetic and buzzing-like attitude of Alexis Sanchez. And, it even goes down to partly why someone like Theo doesn't really get into this team anymore, because we're now a team full of 11 players that have such a strong work ethic and work so well from front to back. So the ability to play Ramsey, who in himself has such a high level of stamina, is able to constantly put in a shift to go backwards and forwards. And I think, obviously I'm slightly detracting here, but I think it was even interesting to see that Cazorla was maintained in that deeper position that we often so readily associate with Aaron. And part of that, again, was just his ability, his speed, and his constant propensity to put pressure on the centre-backs that Liverpool had, who clearly, especially without the likes of Skirtle, struggled to maintain possession and play balls through the lines, and they looked really shaky at the back for the first 10 minutes, and I thought we executed that excellently. And of course, what we were missing really was that finish, in particular from Aaron, within that first 10-minute period. So yes, I was a little tentative because we've seen it so often before. Us starting extremely well, especially perhaps at home, and you talked a little bit, I think, about the United game, for example, and it's hard to not completely push those out of your mind. And this, of course, when Markovic runs through and has a simple pass ready for Sterling to tap in, that obviously changes the complexion of the game somewhat if we do end up going 1-0 behind. And you maybe as an Arsenal fan, you do get that feeling of same old, same old. But of course, within that 10-15 minute period, it's also epitomised the way in which we ultimately played throughout the rest of the fixture. And I think even then, moving forward, as soon as we got that first goal, we looked the dominant team throughout. And even when they pegged one back, I was never really in any doubt. We were excellent, really, ultimately from start to finish. Aside from that kind of 10-15 minute period where Liverpool looked to get a bit of a handle of the game.
I have to admit, as I watched it, I was pulling my hair out that we hadn't scored, and when Markovic was put through, I literally said out loud, "Goal," because you just assumed that was how it was going to go again. But the story of our season, especially the successful parts of our season, have been scoring first. We've scored a lot of early goals. We've taken a lot of leads, and that's been the recipe for our success. When we've fallen behind, we have not recovered. So it's been even more important than ever this season to score first, and we're doing it more often. How about you, Paul? I mean, specifically, I think James sort of expressed what we did right really well, but do you think that some of our early success was down to a really high pressing system and Liverpool's inability to maintain possession and particularly play out from the back?
Yeah, absolutely. It was essential that they in this 3-4-3, it doesn't work for them. They can't long ball it. There was only Sturridge up front. He's a midget, being marked by Per. The only way their system works is to play out from the back, and we saw the pressure that Kolo was under. Khan's a very good player, but he was pressed the whole time by Alexis was on him. But you think of the front three, and then you add in Ozil, who ran around like a lunatic. So you got a first four pressing everything that moves. But you watch where Cazorla and even Coquelin is. You think they're dropping back and kind of holding that midfield, or they're above centre circle. For so much of that game in the first half, particularly while we're on the front foot, Coquelin's on the edge of the box. He's running into the box. He's pressing into the box. So you got Per coming not just up to the halfway mark. He's pushing high into their half, intercepting. Bellerin's intercepting. They're all moving back and forward. They're all in tandem. Now, of course, that leaves you very exposed. But if you're pushing Liverpool players back, then your man's still in front of you and you're still pressing. So this whole system is basically an 8, 9, 10-man pressing system. That's the brilliance of it. That's when it works well. It's also how it suddenly starts to break down when the energy changes, when we ran out of puff at about 10 or 15 minutes. That's why Santi didn't really know where he was, when he probably should have been watching out for Markovic dropping back and Coutinho running forward. Why Markovic and Coutinho were 2 against 1 against Coquelin. Why Koscielny was pushing Raheem. Suddenly that transition to when we lose our energy. So it's both the story of why we were so strong, and also how we had 5 or 10 minutes when we got ourselves into all sorts of soup because we didn't make that change of energy, that transition literally in how we were playing. But it was just brilliant watching how we pressurized those guys. They didn't know what hit them. And they were supposed to be doing that to us.
It reminded me a little bit of what Everton struggled with this season. Everton's given away a lot of stupid goals trying to play out from the back the way Roberto Martinez likes his teams to do it, but they give the ball away and gift goals. And Agent Kolo was in full effect against Liverpool, well, for Liverpool, against us. But, he couldn't maintain possession. They couldn't pass out from the back. Mignolet kept them in it early, although I thought those saves are saves he should make. But ultimately, it was the fact that they didn't seem like they were prepared for us to press. And I read Naveen's tactical preview of the game, and he talked about the importance of us pressing. And, Arsene Wenger definitely did tactics on this day. I know that's a debate. Does he do tactics? Well, on this day he did, because we haven't pressed like that very often this season. And it worked. And it was weird for me because I've always sort of been of the opinion that as great as Coquelin has been, maybe what we need is still to go out this summer and get an upgrade on Coquelin, someone who can do what he does but passes better. And yesterday sort of shifted my opinion to say maybe Coquelin is the perfect fit for that. What we need is someone to replace Cazorla in that lineup, like a Schneiderlin, who can play alongside Coquelin, who is equally defensively astute and powerful, but can pass a little bit more and move up the pitch a little more. Because I thought Cazorla was a little bit wasted yesterday. you did see his weaknesses at times, like for the Markovic chance, but he wasn't joining up with the attack as much until that one chance he had in the second half where he hit the post. I think if you put a Schneiderlin and Coughlin in there sort of at the halfway line or just in the opposition half to help with the press but can drop back, and then you let Ozil, Ramsey, Sanchez, and Giroud sort of wreak havoc in a free-flowing front four, you really have sort of an exciting combination of silk and steel. I don't know why I said that. Pretend I didn't say silk and steel. By the way, that is the name of my next romance novel. You can look for it at airports everywhere. Silk and Steel, coming out this fall. Anyway, obviously Paul gets the points again, so it's a pretty dominant start for him.
This is absolutely blasphemous.
No, I mean he's run riot, James. I'm not going to lie to you.
What's going on?
It's time.
I think just like Begovic, you must have a new Lamborghini parked in your garage.
Yeah, I do. Paul,
don't worry, my energies are about to flag, just like Arsenal's.
Yeah, you're about to hit that mid-match lull. So let's talk about.
But actually, in all seriousness, on that point, I think it's a little rash to perhaps say that in a game like this, whereby Cazorla was admittedly quiet, that Cazorla is now perhaps the player that we should be looking to replace purely on this one performance. And look, going forward, I think he's now 30 years of age, I do agree that we do need a Schneiderlin-like character that's able to either replace Coquelin or play alongside him in future games. And sure, there are certain prototypes or types of games in which that system will suit us better. But the way in which the game played out on Saturday is not exactly how we can necessarily stamp our mark on every single match going forward.
I totally agree.
We've seen exactly how integral Cazorla has been for the large majority of games. So I think it's important to not be too quick to dismiss the importance that Cazorla can have, especially in a game in which his influence wasn't quite as necessary, given how we were able to press so effectively from the front for the entire first half and then look to sit quite deep for large parts of the second half.
Let me just pick up on that for 1 second though, because I want to clarify. I'm not saying Cazorla should be replaced in the squad. I'm saying that for a long time we've been looking at the DM position and asking, do we have a DM? And then Coughlin comes in and we say, is Coughlin the future at DM? And I think what's maybe becoming the more accurate question is, do we have that second deeper lying midfielder to play with Coughlin? And I'm not sure that Ramsey or Cazorla or even Jack Wilshere is a fit for that position the way we like to play. And especially if we're going to press, I don't think any of those guys are a fit for that position. So I'm not saying Cazorla should be replaced in the squad. I still think he can be an important 10 or even a wide player for us in the squad. I think against teams where we're not going to press, he can play that deeper lying midfield position, although I'm not sure he's been fantastic at it this season. I think his best performances came in the 10 when Ozil wasn't available. But I do think that the person playing alongside Coughlin, especially if we press, is maybe someone who's not at the team, at the club right now. And that's the question. So I wasn't particularly saying Cazorla is not a valuable player to us. He is. I'm just saying I'm not sure he's the player to play that position in that style. And then that's where you look and you say, I'm not sure it's Ramsey either. I'm not sure it's Jack Wilshere. I think all of those players are wasted a little bit in that position. They're a little bit of a round peg in a square hole or square peg in a round hole, depending on which hole you're looking at. And, whatever hole you prefer, it's none of my business. And
we don't judge.
Yeah, we don't judge. We don't make judgments about the holes you prefer. Moving on quickly. Importantly. Let's get to the goals because they were awesome. And we'll start with the first one because it came first. That's how the professionals do it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll keep it with Paul because he's taken a commanding lead, and I want James a chance to sort of feed off of his genius. Genius. Kind of like a Bellerin feeding off a Ramsey layoff, and that is what we saw with the first goal. Paul, why don't you just wax poetic about Hector Bellerin?
Hector Bellerin. Well, he's at that age and stage in life where he doesn't seem to know that scoring goals is actually difficult. I mean, you could see, working backwards from the shot, that curler into the far side of the net. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He knew the arc he was looking for. He's got that sweet left foot. Working backwards from that. I mean, Moreno, I don't know what he was thinking with the old. The one thing I'm not going to do is give away a penalty with my arms.
You know what's funny though? As I watched it in real time, I was screaming shoot. There definitely was a moment after he tricked his way past Moreno where you almost could see the light bulb go off in his head, and it was like, well, shit, I'm like 8 yards out and no one's stopping me. I guess I should shoot from here.
The Red Sea parted in a beautiful curving arc.
Let me ask you this. It was kind of an inversion because he didn't overlap. He ran into the channel, and we saw that a lot, the fullbacks running into the channel. Do you think that was something they had worked on? Because Ramsey pulled out wider there, and Bellerin, on a couple of occasions, made the inside run into the channel, not the overlapping run. Did that look like something we were targeting?
I don't know, but I think what they very quickly learned, I mean, you hear in psychological studies that if you have a deck of cards which has more reds than whites, although you don't know it, your brain actually picks up that there's a little bit of a trend going one way or another. I think psychologically they realized they were having success through the middle, despite the fact it was crowded, despite the fact that everybody was there, because Alexis, starting on the left but moving into the center. Ramsey clearly is going to... He actually stayed out wide more than Alexis stayed out wide, but of course he has that tendency to cycle inwards rather than outwards. You got Ozil, who's going to create space in the middle, but he's still starting from the middle. You got Giroud, who's not going to be running all over the place. He's going to ping from the middle. So we were pretty crowded in the middle, but we were having a lot of joy against their back three because we were pulling them all over the place. So I just think, nothing better than quick movement and quick passing to destroy them through the middle, and that's what we pretty much did for the goals. I mean, all of our success and all of our goals came through the middle. We kept doing what was working, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt when they have Kolo Touré in the middle, among others. I mean, that was a pretty horrifically awful back four or back three to start.
It was, and we really got at them. But a bit like rattling the goalie early on, we rattled their back three early on, and I think that was really part of the success. They might have had a reasonable game if we'd gone at them at a normal intensity and given them a chance to settle. But yeah, this was all new to Kolo Touré, and by 5 minutes into it, he was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have one of those days, and he obliged.
Well, it didn't hurt. I mean, Jordan Henderson was terrible, and I think...
I didn't understand the Jordan Henderson decision. I thought he was going to be looking to be dominant in the middle, and they didn't take that option.
No, it was interesting. I mean, to me, if you are looking to play out from the back, then you need players in midfield who can collect from their back four and transition, and Liverpool had no one to do that. And every time Touré or Sacco or Chan was on the ball and they looked up, there was nowhere for them to pass to. I mean, it was brilliant the whole game through.
Just to throw in, do you know what I'm really glad I didn't see on Saturday? Brendan Rodgers standing in front of a microphone telling us all the brilliant decisions he made before that game.
Yeah.
Whereas he, as you talked about, he got absolutely out-tacticked by Arsene. But did Arsene stand up and tell you how clever he was?
No, I mean, I think the interesting thing, though, is I really do wonder how important it was right before the international break that United beat Liverpool the way they did, because I do think that it was a blueprint that we followed a little bit. And I think that the timing of that game couldn't have been any better for us, not only in terms of Skirtle and Gerrard, not being unavailable and all of that, but it really set out a blueprint. For the first goal, James, there was a lot to like. One of the things that I really enjoyed that didn't get as much discussion as I think it should have was Coutinho, standing there watching Bellerin score. He had a great view of it. How important do you think it was to the goal that Coutinho just stopped playing football for 5 seconds after Moreno got beat?
I can't say I paid much attention to Coutinho's onward-looking presence during the goal, but I'll say it was even more important, which hasn't been discussed, and I think deserves a lot of credit.
That's called lobbying for points, but we'll allow it.
No, but in all seriousness, was actually that move was very much started by Ozil's extremely precise ball from so deep, and his ability and awareness to see Ramsey from the right.
I'm going to say something to you. I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to say something that's going to be considered blasphemy. I've watched that ball like 5 times because I could not figure out the path or the flight of that ball. It made no sense to me. That was a deflection. That ball deflects in the midfield and deflects out to Ramsey.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to watch it another 4 or 5 times.
I'm convinced because the pass makes no sense if you watch the way he kicks it and the angle, and then it like takes a midfield right turn to Ramsey. Because I've been with you on that. I even wrote down at the time Ozil brilliant pass to find Ramsey, and then watched it like 4 more times because I could not understand it.
All right. Well, we'll have to bring up the video footage. But I mean, listen. Either way. I'm sure Ramsey was the intended target, whether or not the initial pass was meant to be as precise as it was. It certainly got there in the end and was what started that move. And Bellerin, who's so young, and to show such attacking impetus and confidence in the box, and as has been discussed, a lot of it was in large part down to Liverpool's quite amateurish defending, Moreno in particular, to open up his body in that way, to not try and push him down the lane and push him out to the right of the penalty box and go down the line it's Sunday League stuff. And to be honest, when I first saw it, maybe because, watching Hector and watching Arsenal, you kind of almost naturally sort of embellish some of the things that our players do. But I thought Bellerin had done like a quick step over and completely bamboozled Moreno. But I mean, it was still a nice little shimmy, and to take it in centrally and then curl it in with his left foot, his weaker foot, as precisely as he did was quite remarkable for not only a player of his age, but a player of his position. And it really is exemplary of the kind of talent that this player has, not only, of course, defensively and the importance that he can play in this team, but with the kind of pace he possesses, that attacking threat is so vital for us, and it's something I think we've missed in our fullbacks for quite a while. It was one of the biggest criticisms of Bakary Sagna, a player that I loved, who was phenomenal as a leader and from a defensive point of view, but who was extremely lackluster going forward. To now be able to have a player coming through that has that combination of attacking and defensive capabilities is vital for us. And now clearly, as shown in that move, the way in which he can pull off and make runs in behind down the flank, but also now to come inside, and the interchange between our wingers and the way in which we like to create a dynamic and fluid structure going forward. It's exciting to watch, and I think in part has been perhaps a large reason why Monreal, aside from his outstanding form, has played as consecutively as he has, because of the combination between the more attacking fullback in Bellerin and the slightly more defensive-minded Monreal.
I gotta give it to you, because I do think that the Ozil setup pass, whether intended or not, is overlooked as being crucial to that move. I don't think there's many players in the world that from the position Ozil was standing could find Ramsey, whether he intended it or not. He certainly did find him, and that was the key to that move. So I am going to give the points to James there.
The comeback is on.
It is on.
The comeback is on.
So let's talk about...
I think that I'm sure it was a deflection.
Yeah, it may have been, but I still do think that was the intended region of the pass. You know what? I encourage everyone to go watch that goal again and respond back to us. Let us know. Do you think that was deflected, or is that pass just a remarkable piece of individual skill? Let's talk about Ozil a little bit more, because he deserves it. I took notes during the game, in part for preparation for this podcast, and actually entirely in preparation for this podcast. And in the beginning of the game, I wrote, Ozil doesn't look comfortable, not as good on the left, ? Less interested on the left, ? Because initially he did have some of that sort of lethargic, less involved appearance to him, but he started to grow into the match. And the next notes I had is Ozil starting to move into spaces, Ozil finding spaces where he wants to play, and then obviously he just improved minute by minute as the match wore on. I think once he discovered sort of that freedom to get away from just being pegged out wide on the left, he really improved. Then the free kick. So, James, we'll start with you. First of all, do you think that the free kick is I mean, obviously Ozil hits it well. Do you think it is as big a Mignolet error as some has suggested, or is it just pure genius from the German?
I'll come to that in a second, but I've watched the Ozil pass at least 10 times now. So I've doubled the viewings that you've had. And that ball is, aside from being absolute perfection, is 100% the intended pass that Ozil tried to make. It's not a deflection at all.
It's so strange, though, right? Like, doesn't he hits it with, like, his left, but it curves right? Like, how does he do it?
I think he wraps his foot around it.
He wraps his foot around it. I mean, it takes a dip and it kind of levels out as it comes to Ramsey. It honestly is an absolutely majestic.
If it's intended and if it doesn't deflect, it is one of the most well controlled passes out wide because he doesn't. It's not. He doesn't hit across it to make it bend right. He like wraps his foot around it and bends it around the midfield. It's very strange. Let's move on.
He gets enough height as well to lift it over the two Liverpool midfielders while also allowing it to come back down and literally settle on the ground before it reaches Ramsey. So, I mean,
it's kind of a Tiger Woods over and around the trees kind of shot.
The Tiger Woods shot now is 3 chips to get onto the green from 10 feet out.
We can have our jeans around our ankles for as long as we want over this pass, but moving to the free kick.
We are in Arsenal have now scored more goals from set pieces than any other team in the Premier League. Having a threat from set pieces has been a huge revelation. Obviously, this one, Ozil hits it perfectly. Give me a percentage that it's Ozil genius and percentage that it's Mignolet error.
I'm going to go 70-30, 70% Ozil genius, in that, first of all, given that Mignolet has shifted ever so slightly to his left, Ozil picks it out. He identifies that as a slight weakness in Mignolet's positioning. And then the execution in itself, it's not an easy thing at all to hit it right in that little square area whereby Mignolet, having now moved over, is unable to keep it out. Listen, as a top class goalkeeper, you've got to make sure that you're covering that side. You've got to let the wall do your job. There's no doubt about that.
Can I ask you a question though? Is he just convinced that Alexis is going to strike it, and he's trying to be a little too clever, and he says, you know what, even though I have the wall there, I know the quality Alexis has, he's definitely going to hit it. I'm going to cheat that way. Is the threat of Alexis what keeps him from properly covering? Because when they show it from the goal, the behind the goal angle, he sees it late. You see it late because it doesn't curl over the wall, it curls around it. Do you think it was the threat of Alexis and the quality of Alexis's free kicks that had Mignolet convinced that's where it was going?
No, I mean, I don't think it necessarily had all that much to do with Alexis at all, because I think even from that position, if you want to go over the wall, I'd want my left footer taking it, so it has that outswing going into the right corner anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. On the right-hand side, I'd 100% want my left footer taking that, because, if he wraps his foot around it, it swerves out into the right side of the netting, curving away from Mignolet's outstretched arm. As you see, when he bends it to the left, he has to almost shape it slightly outside the post and bring it back in. I think another reason why the execution of that is as strong as it is. But maybe having Alexis there as well. I guess if Alexis is taking it, he has to go around the wall. But as a goalkeeper, either way, you've got to let the wall do its job, and you can't allow that near post to be left as open as it was. But as I've said, given that was the case, for Ozil to spot it and then execute it as well as he did was no easy task, and by God, was it a beautiful goal to watch.
What about you, Paul? Give me your percentage. Percentage Ozil genius, percentage Mignolet error.
I'd go 75-25. It's always tough for the.
By the way, that is what I call the Price is Right strategy. I'll go $1, $451.
No, that's deducted points.
That would have been 71, 29. Yeah, sorry, 71-29.
We were told there'd be no math. All right, move on. Explain yourself, and then I'm going to explain to you why it is more Ozil genius than Mignolet error.
But you got to lump in three people. Per's obsessed with his positioning versus that outer post. I don't know why Mignolet, to be honest, doesn't notice what Per is up to, because Per is absolutely convinced it's going to be Ozil swinging it the way he did.
Are you suggesting this is a training ground free kick?
Kinda. And I definitely, you see Alexis do the dummy, and whether Mignolet thought it was going to be Ozil going to his near post or Alexis going to his near post, Mignolet thought it was going near post. So he had his mind made up what he was going to be defending against. But I still don't think you can take it away from Ozil. It's a perfectly hit free kick. And I think almost any free kick needs a little bit of a flub from the keeper. If he goes the right way and moves his feet the right way, it needs to be a world-stopping free kick, and there's only one of them every now and then. You always need the goalkeeper guessing slightly wrong, moving, being a little bit concerned, being whatever. And I think they forced it upon the keeper. They bluffed him, and that half step he took, he wasn't even close to getting to what Ozil did. I thought it was, by and large, the credit goes to Ozil, but the boys did a nice job playing poker with him.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think on the free kick, it's just about 50-50. The reality is you have to trust your wall, and you have to decide as a keeper it's not going in on the left side of the goal, or from the keeper's perspective, on the right side of the goal. That's his job, right? The wall has to prevent it from going in on his left. He has to prevent it from going in on his right. Having said that...
I got to say, I'm not sure that's right. You got to trust the wall to make it.
If you put it over the wall and into the postage stamp, then God bless you, you deserve your goal. The keeper, the one thing as a keeper I think you have to say to yourself is, it's not going in the open side of the net, right? I mean, that's your zone.
I think all you can say is the wall's going to make it hard for the guy, and I got to watch that top upper postage stamp, and that's what he was watching.
All right, well, whether you say it's 50-50 or not, here's why you got to give Mesut some credit. The way he receives the ball and touches it around Sacco to avoid the tackle and get the free kick in the first place is a little moment of genius. And that genius sets up the opportunity for the free kick. The problem here is that the percentage that it is Mesut Ozil's skill versus Mignolet's error, when you combine it all together, actually works out to 72-28, which is actually just going to give it to James.
Jesus Christ.
It was close.
So
he's clawed it back. We're
Banana
tied.
Republic around here.
All right, we're going to talk Alexis for a minute.
Paul, you're not going to Arsenal this one up, are you?
Paul, he's clawed it
It's
back.
Just the Markovic through pass to Raheem. I'll be fine.
It's 2-2 at Newcastle. So here's the deal. Sanchez scores a brilliantly hit. It's almost like a half volley at that point goal. It was a sensational goal. Paul, first of all, maybe a word or two about Ramsey's play to set up Sanchez, and then Sanchez's hit, and then just talk to me just a little bit about the game Sanchez had, because I think the thing I'm starting to realize about Alexis, and maybe this is what we just have to come to terms with, he is a totally different kind of player. We are a classical music team, and he is a jazz musician. We are a symphony, and he is a solo artist, and he gives these bursts of individual genius. He's all energy and all effort. He doesn't always fit into what we're doing from a team ethic, but he always finds a way to influence the game. So a little bit about the goal, and then your thoughts on Sanchez's performance as a whole.
Well, you've asked me to start with Ramsey, but I want to take it back one from that, which is that goal starts because Ozil first pressurizes in midfield, followed immediately by Coquelin, neither of which, maybe Coquelin gets a touch on the ball, but he doesn't control the ball. Ozil doesn't touch the ball. It's not going to show up on anybody's stats. But those two guys throwing themselves, upping the pressure, keeping it at the levels we saw in the first 15 minutes, They're the guys who forced the turnover, which was the whole rationale for our first half, at least while we had the energy. And, remembering we were likely to run out of puff after the international break, that's exactly what happened in that kind of the 15 or 20 minutes between the first charge and our second wind. Well, this was part of our second wind, and that goal was all set up by Ozil putting on the full press, Coquelin, and that's why I'd say it wasn't the first 3 or the first 4 guys. It was the first 6 guys. It doesn't work without Ozil doing it and then without Coquelin pressing just as hard. That front-footedness that makes the turnover. Ramsey gets hold of it, pings it into Alexis's feet, who turns beautifully. It was a really good pass from Ramsey, but when you see a goal like that, it was a brilliant pass. Had he not done anything with it, it was just another good pass. That's the randomness of football. Ozil's pass for Bellerin's was a great pass on any day, but it goes from good to brilliant depending on what Bellerin does with it. And in this case, I think what Ramsey was the perfect arcing ball into Sanchez's feet, turns deliciously, great first touch, steadies himself, takes advantage of the time he has, and as somebody said, it was like it was teed, back to the golfing analogy, it was teed that little bit with a little bit of drop onto his foot, where he was able to come under it and kind of get that dip on the shot to take it over Mignolet. It was delicious, it was powerful. I take your point on the fact that he's a little different to what everybody else is doing in the team, but I think part of Arsenal's success this year is to take the players he has, and after all, he went out of his way to get Sanchez, and make a team out of it. And it's kind of a bit of a Kelly's heroes or a dirty dozen. You need those different characters and different ways of playing. Yes, it takes maybe away a little bit from the perfect harmony of the team, but it gives you different looks and different ways to upset a team that they're not going to defending. You can't fall into a rhythm of defending somebody like an Alexis Sanchez, because he's going to do something that you didn't see coming, or that isn't fit. Just as it isn't fitting into a perfect pattern of attack, it doesn't fit into their perfect pattern of defense. He's going to do something that's going to tear at the fabric of that defense, and he did it a few times on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. I think he is definitely a player that needs to adapt to the league, and he's shown an ability to do that very quickly. But I think a player like him is well suited to the league. I think the bigger issue is he's a player that has to adapt to playing in our team, but our team has to adapt to playing with him, because he's not a quick passing possession style player. He is a bit of a soloist, and I think we're seeing, especially in a game where we press and create quick transitions, how effective he can be. I mean, in 90 minutes he only played 36 passes, but his influence was present throughout. And if you are going to press, you can't ask for a player better than Alexis to create that pressure from the front.
But maybe more than anything, taking that point, he's the yin to Ozil's yang. A player who's too generous, and a player in an Arsenal system who's maybe that little bit selfish. I mean, we've been pulling our hair out with Ozil to some degree last year, and for moments this year of him being too generous. But maybe that combination in particular will be the thing where we have our, for different reasons, Bergkamp and our Henry. It's not just two players on the field. Those two players in particular are the ones on Saturday and in general who can up us to a new level. One arguably too selfish, one too generous.
Yeah, I would say that the one thing you can definitely say about that goal is we don't have another player in our squad who would have struck the ball there.
No.
Every other player we have in that exact position would have looked to improve his position or find a teammate. And Alexis hit it because he knows he can score from there, and he did brilliantly.
Pulled the trigger.
Yep. James, what about you? What did you make of Sanchez's contribution, the goal and his overall contribution to the team? in the beginning of the season, we were sort of quote-unquote one-man team. He was doing it all himself and getting it done. Has he now found the space to fit into the team ethic where he can still do his individual thing, but the team sort of understands how to pivot around him a little bit?
So firstly, the goal, that was certainly my favorite goal of the four, all of which were beautiful and fantastic.
They were all picture book goals. Yeah.
I think in part that was due to the beautiful touch from Ramsey and his quick-witted, his speed of thought to play that ball in perfectly to Sanchez, and then to just watch Sanchez thunderburst it past Mignolet, who I guess perhaps could have done a little bit better, but the way the ball was swerving and the speed he hit it with, it still would have required a top save to keep it out. Although I did think it was quite amusing that the one thing you don't do as a defender when you're up against Sanchez is you don't commit inside and allow him to cut back in on his right and create that space for himself, which Kolo did with aplomb. So that certainly made it somewhat easier for Sanchez to create that space just outside the box. But as you say, I mean, there aren't many other players in this team. I'd say maybe Giroud, in the kind of form he's in, would perhaps have had a go from outside the box if it was on his left, but that's certainly up for debate. But agreed, I don't think there's really any other player in this side that would have been able to finish in the same way that Sanchez did. Although I did think the ball, when he brought it back in, did take a nice little bounce off the turf and lifted it slightly so Sanchez could get the underside of his... Could really connect with the underside of the ball, which is why he hit the ball as sweetly as he did. And also, I think it was just great to see Sanchez back on the score sheet, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And then that relates to the way in which Sanchez has fitted into the side. And, perhaps, I think since we've seen the likes of Ozil coming back in the form that he's been in, the Giroud, etc., and Ramsey recently, we haven't been quite as reliant on a player like Sanchez, where a lot of our players gone directly through him. So we've seen him very directly involved in everything we do. But obviously we have a much stronger ability to create output from a wide range of or diverse set of options, from Cazorla playing the deeper role to, of course, Ozil, where a lot comes through, to Ramsey when he's playing the way that he's been playing these last couple of games, to Giroud, a player who's in such a rich vein of form in the centre of things. And, sometimes that soloist attitude, when we're playing as well as we are as a team, he doesn't necessarily implement himself as strongly as he would otherwise. But that's often a good thing. I think we sometimes see that perhaps when Sanchez is a little quieter, we as a team are playing well and playing with a lot of confidence, and we're not as reliant on a player to sort of create something out of nothing. Whereas, in a different game scenario, under different dynamics, you sometimes have to just look to Alexis to beat a couple of players and to create something when we're playing against very compact teams where we're not quite as perfect with our link-up play and our passing game, which naturally throughout the course of a season is going to happen now and then. But of course, we talk about it all the time, that Duracell battery-like work ethic from start to finish, to be able to play 2 games for Chile, the amount of games he's played all season. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's racked up the most minutes in this Arsenal team. To consistently harass and harry the equivalent wing back or opposing defender and create pressure throughout the full 90 minutes, to also be able to track back consistently when we sit back and play a little deeper, but also that ability to wriggle out of tight spots, not only in the opposition half, but also when he picks up the ball deep in our own half. And listen, of course, there is a slightly risky element to it, but I think we saw it, for example, in the Spurs game, when we were pressed deep, we really struggled to get out of those tight spots, and we kept losing the ball. But what Alexis has the ability to do is he can shimmy left and right, and you often see him sort of circumventing a couple of players, drawing a foul, creating a bit of space and really relieving that pressure for us, which I think is so vital in the way we interchange from defence to attack. And often Alexis is then also the one that's able to carry the ball. We saw on a couple of occasions he's the one that starts the counter-attacks. And I think there was a couple of times where he was fouled, but Anthony Taylor didn't seem to call a free kick, or he'd broken free after we'd been under a decent amount of pressure for a small period of time, and perhaps a Henderson or a Liverpool midfielder had just come back and tracked back. But he's constantly a threat on the counter attack, and also when we have a lot of the ball in the opposition half. So I think he has the diversity in his play to create different types of threats depending on the way in which we're set up, and depending on the sort of the game scenario and the in-match setup of the game, whether it is, us constantly putting pressure on the opposition, or if we're having to sit a little bit deeper. And so I think that's a really integral aspect of his game. Something, for example, you can relate it to a Theo. He's obviously a threat on the counter-attack, but he's very reliant on a player like Ozil or a Cazorla to find him with those runs. He's not a player that can really carry it from deep. Someone like Alex perhaps is. But then also his ability in the final third to create that space and create chances is a whole other dimension for opposition defenses to have to deal with.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'm going to give the points here to Paul, because I think as a violation of rules, James, I don't know that it is technically allowed to discuss everything in the entire universe related to the question in answering the question. I think that's a slight breach of etiquette.
I thought, frankly, I answered the question as it was asked, whereas Paul, who much like I normally would, had diverged away from answering the question.
That's true.
Here
That's
I am,
true.
bemused, Elliot.
What I would say is that we are also aiming for, shall I say, a time appropriate podcast.
And here you are wasting more time.
Okay, all right, you know what?
James is a black hole gravitationally pulling every conceivable aspect of a point into itself.
I'm just trying to give you a comprehensive answer.
You
what
did,
do you want
my
from me,
friend.
Elliot? Jesus,
You have done it.
Here we are. Okay, I'll keep my essays from 5,000 words to 2,500 in the future.
Hey, look, you can go to my erstwhile blog and see all the 5,000 word essays you'd like. No, I think you make a lot of really, really important points there, and we will do a spin-off podcast about that answer to cover them in depth. But we're going to move on. I want to get to some of the larger topics of the match now, just some of the takeaways, because we're starting to run long. I mean, Giroud obviously scored a beautiful goal. We'll touch on Giroud very briefly at the end, but one of the things that happened, obviously, we had 2 injury-enforced substitutions, which limited our options, both injuries proving, at least according to the manager, not to be significant, so we won't touch on those because I don't think we need to. But 72 minutes, he brings on Danny Welbeck. He leaves Theo Walcott on the bench. James, is this more further proof that Theo is gone, or just circumstance and to make sure the game is secure? At that point, I believe it's 3-1, and he wants to he needs the work rate that Danny provides and can't afford the luxury of Theo Walcott.
Fear not, Elliot. I won't bore you on this occasion.
You've never bored me. I never accused you of boring me.
No, I mean, I've said for a while Theo's on his way out. There's so few sort of times in a game or match scenarios now where Walcott really fits what we're looking for. Perhaps when we're desperately looking for something new to bring to the side and desperately looking for a goal is now really when we're chasing a game, or a kind of League Cup-esque throwaway game, or game against a perhaps smaller opposition where we're comfortably leading, is maybe when Theo is more likely to be drawn in for game time. But I just don't see it anymore. I mean, we've seen, I think it was Tottenham where Rosicky was played ahead of him. You've got Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain ahead of him. You've got Danny Welbeck ahead of him. And even on Saturday, you effectively had the kind of Ramsey-Ozil combination ahead of him. So
not to mention that we know the manager will play Jack Wilshere in one of those positions as well. If
absolutely, I mean, somewhat on that point is Callum Chambers wasn't even able to get on the bench on Saturday, and we've now got Debuchy, Arteta, Alex and Jack all coming back. So I don't know if we want to once compliment is it Shad Forsyth or the medical staff or whatever, but I mean the depth of this team is as strong as it's been for a long, long time, and I'd hasten to add that it's probably the strongest from a depth point of view of any team in the league. So Walcott's hand is very weak, certainly relative to the position he was in when he was last negotiating his contract, and I'd be very, very surprised if he was in this Arsenal squad come next season.
Paul, I know you're a big Walcott fan. Let's put that to one side, both of our opinions on Walcott to one side, because I happen to think he's a talented player. But for the money he wants, for the role he has, for the depth that we have, was Saturday just further evidence that stylistically or in the mind of the manager or for whatever the case is that he's just on his way out, the manager doesn't see him in the plans, or are you still more willing to see it just as circumstance in that instance? What's your take on the Walcott situation, and did you see Saturday as being any further evidence one way or the other?
I guess I'm more pessimistic than optimistic that yes, that's what it means, that he's just getting crowded out. But I'll make the case for the other side just for kicks. Right now, we don't need his goals because we're scoring them, but that's not always the case. And right now we're comparing comeback Theo, who's basically had no minutes, instead of comparing Theo when he popped his ACL, and he was probably the best player in the squad, scoring goals. He'd just come back from a previous injury, I think, and had finally hit top gear and was, basically hitting unstoppable form, scoring goals for fun, being brilliant. And so, you're comparing different Theos here, but I'm not sure he's got enough runway and enough minutes here to get back to the levels that would make it tough for the manager. It's not that tough for the manager right now. Welbeck was the right player to come on at 70 minutes. And if he wasn't coming on at 70 minutes, he was the right player to start this game instead of Ramsey. So it's, Oxlade-Chamberlain is going to have to play too. You can think, as we talked about, Ramsey's going to need minutes and somebody's going to get pushed out of the setup. Jack's going to want minutes, and we know Arsenal's going to look for them there. Something's got to give, and it's great saying two great players in every position, but that's not actually quite right. You need to have two great players that can play, but you don't need two players at every position when everybody's healthy. Something's got to give. Somebody's going to get pissed off, and somebody's going to want to move on. And I don't know that Arsene has decided he doesn't want Theo. I think Theo will decide he doesn't want to be this far in the pecking order, and I'm not sure it's the money thing. I don't think on either side it's a money thing. I think it's a minutes thing on both sides.
Yeah.
Theo. Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead. No, after you.
Theo will want more money, but more than anything, he's going to want to maintain his position in the English game for England within the Premier League. He's not going to want to start falling further and further down the pecking order. And I don't know how he gets the minutes to have the form to show. We haven't seen the best of Theo. You kind of think at 26 we've seen the best, but every time he's come back, he's got better again. And he's stronger, maybe a little faster than he was last time round, but he's not getting the minutes.
What's funny? Sometimes I think you have to play dime store psychologist to analyze these things, and there may be a case of familiarity breeding contempt here. Theo's been at Arsenal for a long time. Arsene Wenger has known him for a long time. I get the sense that the manager was frustrated at Theo using the very big leverage he had last time around and paid him more than he really wanted to. I don't think he's been rewarded with the performances that the money demanded. I think Theo's injuries obviously have been a reason, but you hear Arsene Wenger excuse players like Diaby or Wilshere or Ramsey for poor performances based on injury. You don't hear him do it for Theo as much. And additionally, some of those comments like we've made contact with the embassy, those are more biting comments than he makes about other players. I think Arsene at this point may just be a little sick of Theo, may feel he hasn't lived up to what he could have been, whether that's injury-related or not. Frustrated by the money he had to pay him last time around, and I think he's willing to cash in on him. And I think James' point is a valid one, that there's just a lot of competition from players that I get the sense the manager would rather give the playing time to. I think he knows he has to find playing time for Welbeck and Oxlade-Chamberlain, and I think he'd rather give it to them than Theo Walcott. I'm going to give the points to James here.
But I want to add, actually, that I'm not sure it's even that he...
hang on to the points there.
Yeah, wait a minute. If you add this, I may take the points away.
Okay,
go, James, go.
Listen, points aside. I'm not even sure if it's, perhaps it's just down to the phrasing, but I feel a need to try and give Danny and Alex more playing time. It's more that they fit the needs of this team and the way in which we look to adapt ourselves throughout the course of a game far better than a player like Theo does. Especially,
well, that's kind of what I mean. I mean, he wants to give them more playing time because they are a better fit for the way we are playing, and their contribution is more comprehensive.
Right, and the important thing is that a player like Theo, who, don't take me wrong, I think is a very effective player, someone who, when he's one of the key members of an attacking trio, can be extremely dangerous, and throughout the course of a season will definitely bag a number of goals and assists. But now, when you have a player like Alexis Sanchez on the opposite wing, he's just, he's sort of just carried alongside the rest of the team, and the qualities that he possesses, the output that he provides, is no longer as necessitated by this team as it once was, when we were lacking the kind of quality that we have now.
Mm-hmm. Because of your insistence on disagreeing with me, I'm going to give the points back to Paul. So we're going to move on. Let's start to wrap up. We've
Paul,
really
you and
long.
your shady games over here.
You
guys. I mean, not only is there one Lamborghini in that garage.
Do you want me to give double points to Paul? Keep talking. You're talking me into it.
What have you got alongside that Lambo, Elliot?
Well,
let's Porsche. What are we?
Let's talk about refereeing then. So really quickly, James, and I want to get to sort of quick hits now. So let's try to keep it quick because we are running long, and this game deserves it because it was fantastic.
Well, me, I'm quick hits, left, right, and center.
You are nothing if not quick. I've heard that. So Anthony Taylor. We criticize him a lot. I thought he was mostly good. The two big calls that he had to make, the penalty decision I think was accurate. The one thing that the Liverpool fans I think feel hard done by is Bellerin not getting a second yellow card. Real quick, should it have been a second yellow and a sending off for Bellerin?
Yes, and I don't think Anthony Taylor actually had a particularly bad game, although I was... as seems to be the case now, maybe it's just a perception of how generally dreadful the refereeing standard has been this entire season. There was still a number of Arsenal fans that seemed to have perceived Anthony Taylor's performance as being, outrageously poor, which I didn't quite see. I think there were a few times when I felt on the counter, for example, Alexis had been shoved over and should have definitely been awarded a free kick.
Well, the big one was where Alexis nicked the ball off someone. It's escaping me right now. It might have been Emre Can, I'm not sure, and he would have been clear away. It might have been Henderson, and he poked the ball between his legs. Yeah, it was Henderson, I think, and Henderson just went to ground.
Right.
And he called a foul, and it wasn't. But, I mean, those kind of calls happen every game,
Sure. No, absolutely. And listen, the big call was Bellerin not being sent off, because I think we would have all been quite nervy having just conceded with 15 minutes to go to be down to 10 men. And frankly, I remember Flamini coming in with a really heavy challenge only a few minutes after coming on. He definitely raised his studs and looked like it should definitely have been a yellow card, but he managed to avoid being put in the book. So
yeah, that was a traditional Flamini. So your takeaway though is that Liverpool are probably right. We probably got lucky with Bellerin staying on. I don't even think it's worth discussing Chan's second yellow. That, to me, I know people are saying he's slipped, but I still feel, look, maybe he slipped, but if you watch it, before the slip, he is diving in from behind, and only bad things can happen doing that.
He lost his footing slightly with his left foot, but he's still swinging around with his right and his
behind,
legs
and
slightly
it's high.
Raised, and he's never getting the ball. I mean, he's literally a couple of seconds after Welbeck has released the ball. So it's a reckless and stupid challenge.
And players know when a challenge is bad. And Welbeck, who generally doesn't react that way, had a momentary reaction like he was going to go after Can. He knew that was a dangerous challenge.
And it seemed to be revenge for that.
Yes, he did him on the sideline.
Nutmeg, back heel that Welbeck. Can likes to think he's the skilled player, and I think that bruised his ego.
Yeah, that's a great call out, Paul. So real quick, Paul, the Bellerin penalty and second yellow, no argument that's a penalty, and also think it should have been a second yellow, or you think the touch was heavy and maybe it's just a foul?
I honestly think that was good refereeing on Bellerin. It's marginal, but if a penalty isn't bad enough punishment, it wasn't a dirty tackle. He was kind of going away from goal, and what's in midfield? That's a yellow in the box. When it's a second yellow, if it had been the other way around, I would have understood it. So I think it could go either way. I thought it was good refereeing. You want to keep players on the field if it's not dirty, if it's not cynical, and if the guy's been adequately punished, and he had been.
I'll give it to James for honesty.
Jesus.
Because it's probably second yellow. Just quickly, and we don't have to discuss this, I'm just going to make this point. I think Bellerin has been a revelation, and what he did scoring the opening goal means that it was a brilliant game for him, because that first goal is the most important, of course. I do think we still see some youth-related errors from him. This is the second game now we've seen where he's very fortunate not to have gotten a second yellow that could have put us in a very bad situation. Probably should have been sent off against United as well. I believe it was United, where he was very fortunate to duck a second yellow card. And he does still tend to have some strange positioning issues out on the wing. But all in all, I mean, based on his age, his performances have still been revelatory, and I don't want to sound like I'm being overly critical. So the second half, just really quickly, a friend of mine who is a very well-known Twitter account and podcaster, but I won't mention him by name, texted me that, he knows it's ridiculous, but he was kind of annoyed by our second half performance. Paul, second half, professional approach to a 3-0 lead, or a little lethargic and self-congratulatory?
Can I come up with a third option?
Yeah, go for it.
I think they were tired.
Yeah.
I think they were realistic. I think they played within themselves. I think they knew they were 3-0 up. It's not on them. We remember the Invincible seasons, as if we went out there and we torched everybody we played. That's not what happened. Good teams find ways to win. And when you're 3-0 up, don't be stupid. And the other thing that needs to be taken into account is Rodgers changed completely how they played. They went from a back three to a back four, much more solid. He decided he didn't want to have his team make him look like a fool. So they played what they were doing. The easy wins weren't there for us. They just pressurized them, and they'll cough up the ball tactic that we had in the first. It was all different. It was all changed. We were still solid. We were still going to get chances. Do
you think also, I mean, the fact that Liverpool changed formation, I mean, obviously that's going to cause you a different problem to solve. I mean, do you think the way we played in the second half was by design, or was by reaction, or a little bit of both?
I think by reaction. I mean, by the design part of it is we were only going to have so much energy. You could have anticipated a slow start to this game, us looking a little bit off the pace, all sorts of things. Players were delayed getting back to Colney after the international break. I think a lull in the middle of the first half and a quieter second half were always on the cards. So it was okay. I don't think you designed to have a quieter second half, but that's a reality of it, that the legs would go a little bit. And let's face it, it was up to them to prove that they could get the goals.
Yeah. No, look, I think the onus was on them. Let me ask you this, James, slightly different question. So by virtue of the way we played the second half, we had more counter-attacking opportunities. I thought both teams defended poorly in their own half. I think we both looked like we were a little bit too easy to break down in our own half. But the second half, we had counter-attacking options. We've been pretty poor on the counterattack this season, and it's strange with players who are as technical and as gifted as we are, but our players seem to miss that final ball. There were a number of times on the counter in the second half where Sanchez missed the player he should have found on the counter, or Ramsey did. What do you think about our counterattack, and why do you think it is that we struggle to play the right ball or find the finishing move that's needed on the counterattack? What do you think is the cause of our struggles on the counter?
Well, firstly, I'm not surprised to find that Tim found something to be critical of.
Oh, you know what? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
But secondly, I think we're looking to be a little overly critical in general in that, firstly, playing a counter-attacking brand of football is no easy task. You've got to be extremely precise on the counter-attack. Things have to... You're changing from one half to the next, moving at incredible speeds. You're looking to play long-ranging passes over long distances, and everything has to be pinpoint perfect. So naturally, I think you're going to see a lot of any counter-attacking team that you watch in world football is probably going to fail to accomplish the exact goal of each counter-attack more often than not, just because it's a difficult art to master. I mean, if you look at the players we have, you look at Mesut, he's the perfect type of player to have on the counter-attack, to spot those types of balls. I mean, Cazorla too, and then
but Ramsey and Sanchez seem to struggle. I mean, could you make the argument that
maybe we've struggled a little bit? I mean, we did struggle against Tottenham, but we've seen games where I think it was the Swansea. The goal when we lost at Swansea, but the goal we scored was a perfect example of strong, powerful counter-attacking football on a day when we.
Well, I was just going to ask. Do you think the one area where we see Wilshere and Walcott not being in the side is that they might be two of our most effective? I think Wilshere is as good as anyone distributing on the counter, and Walcott, obviously, with his pace and direct running, is fantastic on the counter as well.
Maybe, but then. I agree with Wilshere, but the problem with Walcott is he's somewhat obsolete on the counter too, because he's not able to actually carry the ball in the counter attack. So he's great to have as the player that's on the end of a counter attack, but you can't always plan your counter attack to specifically have Walcott always being on the finishing touch. You see with a player like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain or Sanchez, they've sometimes got to be the player that comes deep and carries the ball, and then also be at the end of that same move. So I think that's where Walcott struggles a little bit. We've seen plenty of times where he's lost the ball on the counter-attack.
I think we have players that want to carry the ball through the counter-attack more than we used to, instead of quick passing to players on the run. Is there a little bit of Gervinho and Welbeck these days? I mean, he's so fast, he's so powerful, he's so difficult to track, but he just doesn't seem to find the final ball enough right now.
Yeah, the one aspect of his game, Welbeck, that needs improving certainly is his end product, and by that I mean both his finishing and also his final ball. There's no denying that. But I think we're all at this point quite cognizantly aware of that slight flaw to his game, which you hope is something that can be improved over a little bit more time. But even still, it's not dreadful. I mean, he's still, he's bagged quite a few goals for the England national side. He's come up with a few important goals for us, and I don't think he's expected to, as such, to necessarily always be bringing in that final product, because he's so effective in the other aspects of his game that he brings to the side. But yeah, no, I do agree that he is somewhat inefficient sometimes in the final third with when he has opportunities or has the ability to at least try and find an open man. But listen, I think just very quickly on the way in which he played in that second half, you have to, I think, respect the in-game management as well of the side, because we can look to plenty of games. You can look to Newcastle of way back. You can look to the Anderlecht game this season. You can even look a little bit to the Monaco game at home where we scored that first goal. And I can assure you, I'm I'm confident that 99% of all Arsenal fans were in that moment desperately asking us to push forward and grab that second. And you, as a fan, you want to see the team constantly playing that excellent attacking brand of football and constantly putting pressure on the opposition side. But when it comes down to it, at the end result, it's far more important to play out the rest of the game in a way in which that gives you the highest probability of coming out with the 3 points. And having already scored those 3 goals, I actually think we defended quite well. I don't entirely agree that we looked really shaky at the back in that second half, because the chances they created were mostly reduced to shots from distance. Chan had a couple skied over the bar, and also, he had that one shot that Ospina parried. Outside of Sterling managing to beat Bellerin and win the penalty, Liverpool didn't really create a chance where I would have said that they should have scored. In fact, I think we had the better chances in the second half, because Giroud had that header from the Ozil cross that was excellently saved from Mignolet.
Cazorla hit the post.
Cazorla hit the post. Yeah. And, we haven't even mentioned that Giroud's excellent finish to score the 4th at the end
I
of
was
the game.
about to get to that, so let's wrap it up. We're running really long, but it's a great match, so, we want to talk about it for a long period of time. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna give James the points here because
what?
Well,
I didn't say anything.
No, I challenged him more with my questions, and he answered them in a really articulate and effective way. Yours was more of a softball, Paul.
I didn't say anything.
No, you went for a whole new option as well, Paul. You didn't even. Listen, Paul, you've got off the rails, mate.
People,
please,
for God's sakes. All right, look, it's a tight one now. We're gonna get to 2 last questions, and the first one, really short answers here. So James, will stay with you quickly. Giroud's goal. What impressed you most about it?
Well, it exemplified all of what Giroud's been excellent at. In his current form. It was a goal kick from Ospina. He knocked it down excellently to Sanchez, carried on forward, made the run forward, and I thought not only was his touch excellent when he took the ball, but also the way in which he let the ball continue on into his stride, as he sort of let it through his legs, brought it onto his left, cut inside, and then the finish was excellent. And I think what was interesting about that finish is, I'm not sure last season if we would have seen him demonstrate that amount of confidence to strike the ball from that distance and bury it in the fashion that he did. Because I think not only was his chance conversion obviously a lot lower last year, part of that was also because of his consistent determination to be the provider of a lot of, when we had the ball in attacking positions, and he didn't necessarily exemplify that sort of selfishness to really take any chance or half chance that was presented to him. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that. And as a result, I think his confidence has improved, and his finishing has really been taken to the next level.
What about you, Paul? I think James hits on a really important point there, by the way, which is 2 seasons ago or last season, Giroud would have looked for a teammate, held the ball up, stopped, waited. Giroud this season is doing the 2 things that I wanted to see him do more of and criticized him for excessively prior to this, which is he's finishing his chances, but also he's showing that predatory goal-scoring instinct that you want your center forward to show. He wants to score goals, and he believes he can score goals. And I think that has made all the difference. I guess a question for you, James, to sort of focus on, Paul, to kind of focus on here would not only be what you thought of the goal and what was most impressive about it, but is Giroud sort of the classic confidence player? When he's confident, he's going to play well, and when he's not confident, he's going to play poorly? Or is it just a case that he's improving year over year, game over game?
It's a bit of both, but I think it's more the latter. I don't think he's fragile in confidence, but he's new to all of this. I know he's 28, but he hasn't been at these levels in this league. In arguably the biggest league in the world. Mm-hmm. He only had a season or so at the top in Ligue 1. He was in Ligue 2 or Ligue 3 for the years leading up to it. So. Who wouldn't need the confidence of it? I don't know if that quite makes him a confidence player in the sense that he's up and then he's down. I haven't seen a lot of down with him. The one thing I like about confidence that I'd add to your other points is he's a lot faster when he's confident, in the sense that he may actually be faster. He may have worked on his power and his burst while he was out injured. But if you look at his last 2 goals, the one for France where he breaks through into the box and he torches the guy he's on, he's already running at that point. His first gear or two is slow and will always be slow. But in the goal against France, he bursts into the box and there's no catching him. In this goal, he starts it in midfield with the header out to Alexis, and then he's on the run. Once Giroud's at a gallop, his fourth, fifth, and sixth gear, as we've talked about before, is pretty damn decent. And yes, he cuts back inside, but he cuts back in at pace, confident, at full gallop. And nobody's getting near him. So I think one of the benefits we're seeing with confidence is he's making stronger runs, confident in himself, not looking for other people to lay it off. And so he can put his head down and motor, and, pace becomes less of an issue. People are not catching him up as often as they did in the past.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think the one incident where you'd say he's kind of a confidence player is the home leg against Monaco, where he misses that first easy chance and then the game went completely off the rails for him. But there's no denying that he's improved in every aspect of his game. And I got to give the points to James here for one reason. I think you hit on the thing for me, James, that is the most important thing from that goal. It's not just the finish. It's the confidence to take the shot there. And he wouldn't have done it in the past. And, we want him doing that sort of thing. We used to make fun of him, a couple seasons ago. He wouldn't shoot from 6 yards out, but he'd try half volleys from 30 yards out. Now he seems to have really decided he can score and knows how to finish from good positions. We've got 2 last little things to get to, and I promise, for those of you who even made it this far, our future podcast will be at the 1 hour mark and below, not the 90-minute runtime that we're looking at for this one. But I appreciate those of you who are still with us to find out who's going to win this exciting matchup. Last 2 quick questions. Paul, I think what made Saturday so rewarding is we saw 2 things. Our stars sparkled. Alexis Sanchez looked every bit a world-class player. Mesut Ozil looked every bit a 42 million pound player. Our stars were magnificent. But equally, our unheralded players, who at the beginning of the season we wouldn't have expected to be in the team, Hector Bellerin and Francis Coquelin, were magnificent. Which is more important right now to this team? The stars performing at star level finally at the same time together, or the unheralded players contributing at a level we would not have expected? And please don't say both.
Both.
Oh, for God's sakes. All right, James, you get the point. Moving on. No, quickly. Which has been more important this run, the unheralded players or the stars?
I think it's more important that the stars step up, because when they have big shoulders and they take on the responsibility, that's when the younger players can feel their place in the team. Younger players want to look up. We all remember the quotes about Fabregas talking about coming into a dressing room with Bergkamp and Henry, etc. And look at what happened in his career. Oh, God. His career within Arsenal till it all went terrible. And, that's what Bellerin doesn't want to be the best player in the team. I know he does, but he doesn't really. He wants to become the best player in the team over time. He wants to learn from these guys. He wants to steal tricks from better players. None of them want to be the best team.
No, of course. Player, I mean, Francis Coquelin wakes up every day and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm playing in the same midfield as Mesut Ozil." I mean, exactly. You're absolutely right about that, James. What about you though? In terms of importance to the team, is it the stars performing at the level that they should, or the unheralded players performing at a level we never expected?
It's definitely the stars performing at the level that they should, because those are the players that can change games. But also I think we talk a lot about the importance of players that haven't been playing, or players that are going through a tough patch, or maybe inexperienced players, finding it a lot easier to find their feet and to find the kind of form that we expect from them when they're part of a team that's already playing with a lot of confidence and playing well. we talk a lot about this whole 4-1-4-1 formation nonsense at the beginning of the season, and how that was perhaps partly down to a slight demise at the beginning. But I'd be pretty confident that even if we did set up some sort of 4-1-4-1, which, by the way, I don't really think is actually all that different to the 4-2-3-1 that we're prospering from now anyway, but with the same players, I think we'd look a lot better, a much stronger side, because a lot of the confidence that we breed and the dynamism and the fluidity and the strength in our attacking play especially comes down to our top performers performing at that high level.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I would just go the other way in this one respect. I would say that over the last 7 or 8 seasons, we've always had some stars that have performed at star levels, whether they were Cesc Fabregas or Robin van Persie, whoever it was. The team's been carried a little bit by stars, but it hasn't taken the next step up because the role players have been so poor. And I think Francis Coquelin in particular, I mean, but to have had him in the team playing this way at the start of the season. I think what he's done and what Bellerin has done in the absence of Debuchy has allowed us to benefit from the stars playing the way they did, because even if Ozil and Sanchez played at this level, in the absence of performances like Coquelin's and Bellerin's, I don't think the results would match their performances. Final question, and again, you can't say both. And I'm gonna tie the points into that question and this one, because you guys kind of answered the same way to that last question, which was clever. You know what? Let's just score that a draw. There we go. Last question. Here we go. One or the other. Can't have it both ways. Forget the FA Cup for a minute. This season, domestically and in Europe, a case of what should have been, what could have been, lamenting missed opportunity, or a case of excitement for what the future holds? Paul, let's start with you.
You could certainly go the lamenting way, but my personal feeling is excitement. Sequence is important too. Last year we started great, led the league, and then tailed down, and then maybe saved it towards the end. But we've had too many seasons where people have said or been able to say that, we look good for 2/3 of the season and now tail off. And we've changed that story. So you can't come out of this year without saying you feel optimistic. Well, somebody can, but there's always somebody. You're going to come out of this season, presuming things go the way they do. I mean, we got, 7 games to go. Assuming we keep up this level of play and at least maintain this strength, you've got to come out of this feeling optimistic, positive, going into the summer, thinking we're now, instead of being 2 players short, we're maybe 1 player short, and really that's a second player to balance out Coquelin, to give us options in that position. We actually have a player now.
Totally agree.
So optimism, looking forward. Yes, you can do the what could have been, but we're going to finish strong. We're going to feel good. Our season ramped up. It takes us into a summer where there isn't a major tournament. We just need, if we don't lose anybody important, we just need 1 or 2 good signings. And we know what the template is for next year. So optimism overall.
How about you, James? Is it a case of what should have and could have been, or is it a case of what's going to be?
You know what, Elliot? I'm going to turn the tables. I'm going to deduct points from whatever sneaky points you've been adding to yourself. Because these things don't need to be mutually exclusive. In that,
I like it. Disagree with the premise. That's a good start.
The poor bastard.
But listen, it's difficult to look at the season because and not think and not have both feelings and both sentiments directed towards it, because we talk a lot about progress and how the team is shaped, and we talk a lot about this idea of sort of short-termism in football and this recency bias that we see so often in football. So, looking ahead, without any doubt, you can't but feel optimistic. And that's the obvious answer for me. You know, I've been optimistic from, I think certainly from at least January with regards to the squad, and I think moving forward, obviously the importance for any team and any squad and any club as an organisation has got to be the long-term prospects and the long-term benefits of the team over any sort of short-term needs and desires that we have as fans. So yes, I think now we're probably looking at a side that has perhaps breached that somewhat watershed moment, trophies aside and trophy drought aside, of a team that's now really looking to step into being a team that can perhaps be brandished alongside some of the other top world-class sides in European football. I think that obviously will only ever come to the fruition, or that will only ever be labelled with us once we actually significantly begin to progress within the Champions League. I'm not sure if we can, if it's ever possible, at least in the very near future, to really reach the echelons of the Barcelonas and Real Madrids of this world, because that in itself is a huge leap to make. But I do think moving forward now, we're looking at a team that should be and probably will be challenging right at the top of this table quite consistently over the next few years. But with that being said, I think this season was a really great opportunity to actually look to win this league title, because I don't think Chelsea are anywhere near as good as a lot of the pundits, or as Paul would refer to them as cundits, sort of think of this Chelsea side. And we really had a great opportunity, probably once again, to win this league, especially given the way Chelsea are now faltering. But unfortunately, it's out of our hands, given how slow we were at the start of the season.
I think you make a lot of important points there, and I think what would tilt this slightly towards what could have been, and lamentation for me, is Europe, because you just don't get an invitation to progress to the quarterfinals more than we had this year, even screwing up the group stage as we did. And we hit the quarterfinals at a time when we really were starting to click. And to not get past Monaco is a huge disappointment, especially given the way the draw shook out, because I think in our current form, the way we're playing, we could have beaten Juventus. And given the cushion we now have domestically in the top four, I think you could say the top four is probably sealed. It would have been the best chance ever to pour all of our focus into the Champions League quarterfinals, not worrying excessively about the domestic competition, because top four is just about assured. So that's a real case of what should have and could have been. I have a little more sympathy domestically, because I think coming out of a World Cup is a little bit of a toss-up. And I think, we had some difficult circumstances there. I do think also that we made our life more difficult by not adding in the two areas that we know we needed to. But ultimately, of course, the points go to Paul, because James disagreed with the premise of my question.
Yes, he did.
I think we should leave it there, given that it's just the scant 98 minutes that we've been recording now. But we'll add up the points. For James, 13 points. For Paul, wait a minute, let me double check. 16 points.
Oh, Jesus.
And that makes your winner for today's podcast,
Elliot,
with 21 points. It was a good effort, and I have to credit both of you. I thought you did a fantastic job. But in a pod that ran a little bit long, I had the staying power and the stamina, which is what I've been known for quite some time. We should leave it there. It was a spectacular victory, one that's caused us to go on far too long. We will be much more brief and to the point next time, especially given that it's just Burnley at home. I think top four is wrapped up. Now it's just a question of how far can we push. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. Of course, there's an FA Cup semifinal still ahead, and hopefully Liverpool get bounced by Blackburn midweek, and I'm happy to have the easiest path possible to another trophy. As always, you should follow these wonderful, eloquent, articulate, and shall I say slightly verbose individuals on Twitter. The first of them is James. You can find him at GoonerFanatic49. James, a pleasure. Thanks for competing. We have some great parting gifts for you.
Cheers, a pleasure.
Yes, a pleasure.
I hope you, Paul, and my dear listener have all had a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
And may you enjoy the rest of your wonderful week after a glowing victory at the Emirates.
Thank you, James. That was a wonderful epilogue to the podcast. And as always, Paul, pausing in my pants, a heroic effort, not a victory. We have some wonderful parting gifts for you as well. But Paul, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. Cash I deal in cash, pretty much exclusively cash.
Cash. Got it. My name is Elliot Smith. I am your winner today. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Thank you for hanging in there with us. As I said, next time we'll probably do like a little 5-minute Burnley podcast to make up for this. That's coming up next weekend. Until then, enjoy the midweek football. Root hard for Blackburn in the FA Cup. We'll talk to you next weekend. Cheers.
Go Blackburn.